Hi everyone, and welcome back on the Creative Cloud YouTube channel for the motion design live streams. We are live from San Francisco for one new session about After Effects, and we're very lucky to have with us Vincent.
Hello, nice to be here.
Hey. So Vincent, yesterday you introduced us to the world of scripting in After Effects, and today you want to cover something else, and I'm really a newbie. Like, I don't know anything about what you will cover.
Right.
So yeah, don't be offended if I ask stupid questions, but you want to cover 3D workflows?
Yeah, so technically today we're going to talk about all things 3D in After Effects. We're going to talk about the 3D that you can do in After Effects, the 3D that you can do in Cinema 4D, and then the cross bridge between those two. So how to bring in stuff from Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, Houdini, Maya into After Effects, and work with it there, because usually you just don't stop in Cinema 4D. You usually bring it into After Effects to composite, to add the following, the tweaks and stuff like that. So we'll talk about 3D today, and hopefully we'll get some really good questions in the comments, because, this is really all about what you guys want to know and some of the questions you guys want to ask. So, this is my site. We have some tutorials on some of the 3D stuff in After Effects and Cinema 4D already. But in this case, we're going to use Cinema 4D in this kind of stream, because that's kind of like my forte. I know Cinema 4D more than 3ds Max and stuff like that. So.
Which is good, because it's also something I think you can start. I mean, I see more and more motion designers coming from After Effects when they want to start with 3D, they use Cinema 4D.
Right, and the reason why that is because Cinema 4D is really motion graphics oriented. Whereas 3ds Max and Houdini is more for visual effects, really crazy smoke simulations and stuff like that. I mean, you can still do those things in Cinema 4D. It's just, it's not just right in front of your face, So it's not as daunting, and it's very easy to do.
Good to know. So I guess you guessed it already in the chat, but this is an interactive class, so don't hesitate to ask questions. We will try to answer all of them. I mean, I won't, but Vincent will try to answer all your questions. And as usual, we invite you to make sure that you subscribe to the Creative Cloud channel. It will give you actually more chances to win a 1-year Creative Cloud subscription. We will give it away. It can happen at any time during the stream.
Awesome, yeah. So someone is asking about multipass and setting that up correctly. We will cover multipass actually in the stream, so can't wait. So before we even get started here, I just want to introduce you guys to Cinema 4D in general, because a lot of people are just, mostly After Effects, less Cinema 4D. So I'm going to hop into Cinema 4D here. Now, the great part about Creative Cloud is that you get Cinema 4D Lite with your Adobe After Effects subscription.
Yeah, because maybe it's not obvious, but Cinema 4D is not a product by Adobe.
Right.
It's by Maxon.
It's by Maxon.
Yeah, but we have a partnership. So it's true that After Effects and Cinema 4D communicate very well together. Yes,
and it also helps because we have something called Cineware, which I'll also talk about in a future stream, or in a future part of this stream here. So this is Cinema 4D. It doesn't look as daunting as maybe something like 3ds Max, a lot more buttons everywhere. So this is the general scene here, and the great part about Cinema 4D is not how easy it is, but also we have something called the MoGraph module within Cinema 4D, and that really allows you to create motion graphics. It allows you to create things symmetrically very easily. You can clone things very easily, add some randomness to it, add some effects to it and animation to it really quickly without really any keyframes. So it's all just like right there. And we're gonna go ahead and just kind of dive through some of this stuff, and I'll show you a more practical application, real application on how to use these MoGraph things. So we can create some simple geometry like spheres, for example, in here. And the bottom right-hand corner here is pretty much the effects control, similar to After Effects. So we have, we can always just change the size and all that stuff, increase the segment counts and all that stuff. But where MoGraph comes in is we can go to the MoGraph here, and there's a lot of different objects in MoGraph. But the most popular one is the cloner here, and you can kind of guess what the cloner does. It pretty much clones things, and you can add variation to it. So if we make a sphere a child of the cloner right here, as you can see, it automatically clones it 3 times. And we have a lot of options in the object module here. So we can use linear, radial, grid array. So you can generate clones very, very easily.
Nice.
And you have all these options right here. And, we'll just leave it. We'll change it to maybe 450 by 450 by 450.
Nice.
We'll zoom out here. And this is looking pretty good. This is looking pretty good. But how do we add more to this stuff? Because we don't want just a grid. So luckily we have something called effectors, and these things affect things that are linked into the MoGraph system here.
Okay.
So for example, we have a delay effector. We have a Python effector, which you can use Python to kind of drive your animations.
The scripting language?
Exactly, the scripting language. So it's very, very powerful.
Nice.
We have the random effector, which is what everyone really uses. Shader effectors, you can use black and white maps to drive animations and drive certain things.
Okay.
Sound effectors to make your things react to audio waveform.
Nice.
Very common for, that VJ loop stuff.
Yeah.
So
we had a VJ. We had a DJ Cutman. If you look at the previous streams,
we
had someone like DJ Cutman making animated covers and on the beat of music.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was nice. And they are already so they are talking about the difference between Cinema 4D Lite and the full version. Do you know what's different? Or?
I don't have the exact list on what's different.
I guess it's on the Maxon website. That's what they are.
It's all online, but for the most part, I believe you can't really have any third-party plugins in Cinema 4D Lite.
Oh, I see.
So you're limited to just
extrusion. I know
the extrusion stuff.
Light.
But Cinema 4D Lite does have most of the MoGraph modules.
Oh yeah. Oh,
so
nice.
you will have cloner, you will have the random effector and stuff like that. So everything I talk about, you should be able to do within Cinema 4D Lite.
Right away.
Yes, right away.
By the way, how can they launch Cinema 4D Lite? I think they have to. First, you launch After Effects, and from After Effects, you can launch Cinema 4D. No?
Yes, you can actually create a new Cinema 4D file from within After Effects.
Okay.
So we can try to do that right now, but I believe in a recent update, I think you don't have to do that anymore. I think you can just choose, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
so we can go to New, and we can go to New Maximum Cinema 4D file.
Okay.
And that will that will launch Cinema 4D Lite.
It makes sense. Thanks.
And so we're back in Cinema 4D here, and let's say we wanted to play around with this kind of cloner of spheres here. We can always add maybe like a random effector, and like that name implies, you can crank up the strain, you can add some randomness to it. So right now we're adding some randomness in the X, Y, and Z position of all these spheres, but you can enable scale. We can just change the scale, maybe like 5.
Ooh.
Maybe about like 0.5, 0.2, 0.3, 4. So you can get these randomness in your objects. So basically this is just to kind of add some randomness to your systems here. And by doing something like this, you can really create some really complex animations. Think about it as if maybe you were creating streetlights for a street. You wouldn't want to create 50 different streetlights. You would just create maybe 1 or 2 and then clone it down the street or clone sidewalks down the street. So it makes things a lot easier to model and also to just build and animate stuff. So really crash course. And the great part about Cinema 4D and why you would want to use it is that you can also create some really basic stuff, basic geometry right within Cinema 4D very easily.
Okay.
And also apply materials like reflections and stuff like that, and refraction and
textures,
glass materials.
Oh, nice.
Because in After Effects, you can't really create transparent materials. You can lower the opacity, but it's not the same thing.
I see what you mean.
So let's say you need something like a glass prism or something like that. In After Effects, you can easily do that in Cinema 4D within like 2 seconds. And let's go ahead and try to set that up now here. Just really quick scene. So we'll double click to create a new material. By the way, I'm using Cinema 4D R15, so I'm not on the latest R18 right now, so I don't even have the reflectance channel. That's how OG I am. But you can still follow along using any newer version of Cinema 4D. The settings are similar, except you'll be in the reflectance channel. So we'll go into the color here. Maybe we'll make a darker gray. And we can add some reflections. Right now, there's really nothing going on in our scene to reflect, other than itself.
Okay.
But we can go to the reflection. A lot of people add a Fresnel shader to kind of add more reflection to the edges of the object, and then the center or the front portion of the object isn't as shiny or reflective. Kind of a more realistic feel to it, maybe for cars. But we do want to maybe lower down the opacity of the Fresnel shader to maybe around 25 or so it's not as intense. And we can go into the transparency even and add some transparency. Now this is where it gets really, really cool. And we can change the refraction amount. So 1 is the refraction index of air. There's a whole list about this stuff, but I think glass is something around 1.3 or something like that. I'm not sure, but these are just scientific numbers that define the refraction rate of light as it hits or goes through these materials here. So if I just go ahead and hit render, you can kind of see we have these. You can't tell that they're transparent right now, but once we add a background.
Because of the environment, because there is no environment.
Right. So let's go ahead and just throw in an environment here. So I'm going to add a sky object here, and I'm not sure if this is actually available in.
Yeah, they're talking about it. They say they're asking why Cinema 4D Lite does not render skies, but it has the option. So yeah, I mean, you need to check Johnny on the Maxon website, I guess.
Right, and I'll touch up on a lot of these once we go through this a little bit. So I just want to give you guys, for those who are not familiar with Cinema 4D, kind of just like a taste of what Cinema 4D is about and what it can do. And then I'll answer some more specific questions about Cinema 4D for those who actually know Cinema 4D.
Cool.
So something that we can do is we can actually create a sky object. And this is just a giant, massive sphere encapsulating your whole scene right now.
Okay.
And what we can do with the sky object is throw in an HDRI, which someone mentioned.
Yeah, what is it?
In the comments. HDRIs are pretty much image files or files that have a lot of, it's pretty much an image, but it has a lot of, I guess, data in it or color data in it, and we use that to light our scenes in Cinema 4D. So for an example, we can create a new material. We'll just call this sky. We'll double click on it to bring up the material editor. And this for those who are unfamiliar with Cinema 4D, this is basically where you edit your materials. So you can change the color, you can add reflections, bump maps, textures, displacement, which we will cover, and all that stuff here. So we're gonna uncheck the color, and basically we're gonna use an image to light our scenes. So for example, we will, and for that we'll need the luminance. This is the bright sections of the material here, and we'll load in a texture. So we're gonna load an image, and I have this product right here by Video Copilot Andrew Kramer for HDRIs. But you can easily Google HDRIs on Google and stuff like that, and you'll see tons of free ones.
It's a specific, but at the end it's just a JPEG, or is it a...
It can be a JPEG, it can be HDR, it can be pretty much anything that you want it to be, as long as it has some sort of data. Usually JPEGs are not the best because you don't have all that depth information, but some larger ones, like 50 megabytes per one file, has a lot of lighting information, a lot of bit depths and stuff like that. So you have a lot of variation from black to white values. Very useful for more professional stuff, but JPEGs will actually do just fine. So we'll go ahead and just select this random HDRI, backlight 4K 3.
You have Nina who says hi.
Hello, Nina. So we'll add this to our luminance channel here.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
So here we have the material of our HDRI. We'll drag that material onto our sky object. And as you can see, if I just do a quick render, so you can see that the skies are around our environment. We threw the texture on there, and luckily it's mapped correctly. Spherical projection, because the sky is basically a sphere. And
now it looks like a tunnel.
We have our
that's
environment.
That's on purpose. That's what you...
Yes. So if we just do a quick render here.
Interesting.
You can see that we have our environment in the background, which is the JPEG that we attached.
Yeah.
And then those things are actually lighting our sphere. So you can see these little highlights right here.
Yeah.
These are from these tunnels right here.
Wow. And
so if I just zoom in a little bit closer to these things, you can see the kind of detail that goes on. So transparent, very refractive. Usually you don't want 100% opacity, transparency, maybe around like let's just say 80%, and we can maybe add some blurry reflections. Now be careful when you add blurry reflections or even transparency in general, it really takes a render hit. So something that would take 2 seconds normally with just regular textures will take maybe like 15 minutes per frame if you start adding these crazy blurs. Depending on what you're doing here. So let's go and tint this maybe a blue color so we can really see what's going on. So if we hit a render, you can see that we're starting to have some more blurry reflections. And as you can see, the render time is a lot longer now.
Oh, yeah.
It was really instant before, but now it's taking its time, chugging through. So we have, these nice glowing blue spheres lit by our HDR environment. And just something basic like this. This is the beauty of Cinema 4D is that you can just create something like this really easily within the application. So, someone asked if anybody knows if Adobe can edit VR videos, and it actually can. And in fact, After Effects is pushing out updates to support VR stuff, and Premiere also has that stuff now.
In Premiere, you can import like 360 videos and
right, and it'll map it correctly. It'll map it to the right projection and stuff like that. So you can edit in Premiere that way. And you can also use plugins like Metal Skybox to map things out correctly and start editing stuff in After Effects. So this is just a really rough thing in Cinema 4D here. Let's go ahead and move into a really cool example where you can kind of see how MoGraph works. Before we do that, let me go ahead and show a little bit more about MoGraph, just so we know a little bit more. So let's go through here. It's just, in fact, let's go ahead and check out MoText. Now, MoText is basically just a 3D text tool within Cinema 4D here. So let me just go ahead and rotate this. MoText is just a basic tool to create 3D text within After Effects. So we can do like Adobe Live, for example, and choose a nicer font. We can use, Futura or something like that, and use a medium font and center align it. And you have the basic tools to create 3D text, and you can add some basic bevels or fillet caps.
Okay.
So maybe we'll set it to like 3. And we'll just throw in our glass material onto our text just for this sake. And maybe we'll just push the cloner pack just so we can see our stuff more clearly here. And we'll just do a quick render. And you can see it's really taking its time here.
Looks like old printers,
Right. So we have our 3D text, and you can get more serious about this stuff. You can start adding shadow to the bottom of the ground to start making it more look realistic. You'll need a shadow catcher for that. So just like that, we have full 3D text. And the reason why this is important is because After Effects is not truly a 3D post application here. So you can't really create real 3D geometry within After Effects because it's really on a 2.5D system. So you can have 3D solids that are flat, that are moving around in 3D space, but they're not extruded in 3D. But we do something called the ray tracer in After Effects, which can actually create 3D geometry within After Effects. But I think that has stopped development recently, and they may pick back on it a little bit later, I believe.
Yeah, because I think Jason will cover it tomorrow, but I think we announced that now what's the name of the engine? Cineware? No?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can access directly the engine from After Effects.
Yes.
So maybe it will make things easier. And Cineware will render, not After Effects. So apparently you can take shapes, like you start with shapes in After Effects and extrude everything, and this is calculated by Cineware. And this is hardware accelerated.
That's even better now.
Yeah.
So tapping into
this is coming. This will be the next release.
Oh, so I got a sneak peek about that.
And tomorrow, Jason will sneak peek that. He will show it live.
Awesome. So I think someone mentioned in the comments that Cinema 4D does not have global illumination. I think you're talking about Cinema 4D Lite, because I know the full Cinema 4D version does have global illumination, which is essentially uses your whole environment to illuminate itself, which is very, very render intensive. In fact, we can also do that right now. So we're pretty much making the worst render times possible right now by creating glass, blurry reflection, refraction, and now we're going to add global illumination, which, like I said, takes your whole scene and calculates all the illumination based on itself. So a sphere will illuminate another sphere, and this glass will illuminate this other glass. So it's all these calculations. May not be as clear in glass because glass is not really illuminating anything. But let's just see here. And you can see the render times is almost double. So it renders the global illumination pass first, the irradiance cache.
Oh, there are 2 passes? That's what
two
you mean?
passes.
Okay.
And then it's going to render your scene. So
Wow.
this on its own takes a lot of render intensive CPU power, but it does make the results look a lot nicer. It looks more realistic because in real life things illuminate other things. But as you can see, this is a very render intensive process. And let's see what the comments are saying.
Yeah, they're talking about if there is on Creative Cloud something to produce music. And the guy there, they're talking about Adobe Audition, which is, you have all the classic VST effects with Audition. You can have multi-tracks, so it can be like quite advanced, but it's sort of like to produce music. There is no MIDI mapper. So if you want really to produce music with your instruments, usually, the industry, they use either Logic Studio or Pro Tools. But Jason Levin, who will be there tomorrow, is like the worldwide Adobe Audition expert. So come back tomorrow, same time, and you can ask as many questions as you like to Jason about music and audio.
Yeah, so
oh, look at that.
As you can see, the scene looks a lot more realistic now. Before, the glass was kind of like weird, but now it's starting to look as if this glass material is actually incorporated into the scene, in the environment, in the lighting, because global illumination really just changes the lighting of everything. But as you can see, the render hit is more than double.
And it was just one frame.
Right.
Wow.
And someone's asking about alternative renders in Cinema 4D, and there are different render engines. So right now we're using the standard render engine right now. So we can switch it to Maxon's more recent physical render, which attempts to render things more realistically, but again, it takes a render hit. Someone's asking about V-Ray. That's another 3D alternative render. This works for, I believe, 3ds Max, Cinema 4D, all the different 3D applications out there. There's also Octane, which is very, very popular right now. There's Arnold Render. There's a lot of different renders out there. RenderMan. But those are more...
RenderMan?
Yeah, render. Those are more high-end stuff used in productions for big corporations and big studios. Like Digital Domain is probably going to use their own renderer and stuff like that. Or they use third-party renders. But in this case, we won't touch on Octane and Arnold so much because it's too advanced. And it's definitely a learning step because you need to know how materials work and use nodes and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different. I think someone's talking about Substance. Substance, I think they're talking about the texture tool. It's a program, I believe, that allows you to really get in there and really texture things, and I believe it's very inexpensive. I think it's called Substance Painter or something like that, but it's definitely a really, really popular tool to start texturing your 3D models and stuff like that. So as you can see here, this is the 3D environment with the physical render. I'm not sure if you can tell a difference. It does look a little bit better.
I can tell. Yeah,
but this is a different renderer. And
using a different renderer. Okay.
Yeah, I'm using the physical renderer.
I think it was like
right
before
now.
the global light. Okay.
Right. So now that we have all this set up here, so like what can we do with this? Because this is in Cinema 4D, and I want to bring it into After Effects to do some composites. So you have really 3 options here. You can the most traditional standard way is to render this scene into After Effects in sequences of images. So every frame is an image. Oh. And then we bring all those frames into After Effects.
Okay, it becomes one track.
Right, one track, just one track.
Sequence of bitmaps, and that's it.
Exactly. Okay. So that is the traditional route. This is how people do it for a long time, years. But more recently, we have Cineware, which will allow you to pretty much take your whole scene and just bring it into After Effects. No rendering required in terms of files. And then we have something called Element 3D by Video Copilot, which really changed the game for After Effects.
Okay.
Here, so we'll go ahead and talk about the traditional method first. So to do that, we want to set up our render settings here into the output, and we want to change our our project to, let's just say 1280 by 720. So 720p. You can change your resolution, your aspect ratio, your frame rate, 24. And then this is the important part if you're rendering it. You want to set the frame range to all frames. So it's going to output all the frames and not just your single one frame. Very important here. And then we'll set the frame from 0 to, let's just say, let's just do 24. I don't want to take up all this render time. Here and in the save option, we have something called regular image, which will just save the image sequence to wherever we want. But what we do want is multipass. Now, multipass rendering is really, really important in compositing in After Effects. So basically, the scene has multiple different aspects, right? We have the color, which is just gray. We have all the reflections. We have shadows. We have the lighting by the environment. And it'd be great to have all these things separate in its own pass in After Effects for compositing here. So let's just go back here. Let me show you real quick. We'll set the frame range to just current frame for now, just to test. And I'm going to turn off the global illumination because it just takes way too long to render, and switch it back to the standard renderer here. So it's not going to be as pretty of an image here, but it should give you the idea of what's going on here. So if I go into the settings right here, and we add a multi-pass, we can select what aspect of the image we want in a separate file.
Wow.
So for example, let's just say I want an image sequence of just shadows. Right? It's going to render just the shadows of this thing. So let me go ahead and add a light just so that we have some shadows to work with. So I added a regular light. I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to change it to Omni Light Shadow set to area. So this should generate some kind of light here. So hit render, and as you can see, you can kind of see it. But we'll go ahead and just go to the multipass, and we'll do a render frame. We're going to render to the picture viewer here. The picture viewer is what you're going to be using to render your whole scene for final production.
Okay.
But if we go into the layer and go to multipass, oops, we don't have the shadow in here yet. Let's just see. Make sure you enable multipass once you add the shadow pass in there. That's going to be a problem. And let's go ahead and just add a few more so we can see. We can add maybe a reflection multipass, and we'll add a diffuse, maybe a specular. Just to be safe, we'll add an RGBA image, which is pretty much the image by itself, not separate in any way. And maybe we will add, we'll just keep it at that. So we're going to render the picture viewer once more. And in the multipass section, you can see what I'm talking about here. So I'm clicking on the reflections. Let me just maximize this. I'm clicking on the reflection. And as you can see, we're just seeing an image of just the reflections only. We go to the shadows, we're going to see just a pass of the shadows. And this is really important in compositing because then you can fine tweak the speculars. We can fine tweak how much shadow we get. We can fine tweak, how strong the reflections are. And then we can color correct and color grade individual passes of our 3D scene.
Oh, yeah.
So you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of control over, and this is diffuse. This is just the color.
So in this case, in this case, you would get multiple layers.
Yes,
in After Effects, and then you can fine tune.
You would use blending modes like add, screen, all that stuff to composite it back in here. So if you want to change the color of this whole scene, instead of re-rendering it again, you can just edit the diffuse channel.
Just tint the diffuse channel.
Exactly. You can just tint the diffuse channel, and all that's great. And one last pass before we move into After Effects here. I wanna add a camera into the scene, and this is just like an After Effects camera, and we can zoom out here to see our camera view. Now, one important aspect in photography and in 3D is that we like to add depth of field. Yeah. So like, f1.8, really shallow, nice depth of field and stuff like that. And we need to add that into Cinema 4D. And we want to do that in Cinema 4D. Now, Cinema 4D can render depth of field natively inside. But again, it takes forever. So a lot of people like to export something called a depth pass. And we'll use that pass to add depth of field in After Effects. Because it's a lot faster in After Effects, post depth of field.
So how does it work? Like, do you render just what is in the back and you add some blur?
So I'll show you. So we will add. So we added a camera, right? We're gonna go into the settings again. Under multipass, we'll add a depth at the very bottom. I don't know why it's at the bottom. It's not even
Just to bother
in
you.
order. Right. We'll add a depth pass. This is important. So now, in order to set the depth pass, we want to go into the camera view here. And we want to set this object right here. We want to bring this forward.
Okay.
And for, let's see here. Let's see. For details, we want to enable front blur. So we're going to set this point right here that I'm grabbing, the very back.
Okay.
This should be the far point. This should be the focus distance.
So Adobe should be blurry.
Yeah, so the focus distance, we're going to set to the back of our scene.
Yeah.
So whatever's back here is going to be out of focus. And we'll set the front point right here. This should be the front blur start point or end point. And we'll set it to the front of our scene. And the reason why we're doing this is that we are setting up our black and white map. So this front point right here, the front map blur, anything at this depth in this Z position is going to be white or black, depending on what you're doing. And then everything back here is going to be black.
Okay.
And everything in between is going to be some shade of gray, right? And we use that data in order to blur certain aspects of our scene.
Wow.
So this is why we're setting it up this way and mapping out this way. And then so now if we do another quick render to the render engine.
Hi, Godfrey. Welcome.
Welcome. Everyone's having
Tanzania.
a good conversation right now. So if we go into the depth pass, oh man. Let's go ahead and try this again. Let's see. Maybe we can use the rear, see if this works out. So we'll do another render.
Oh, here we go. Oh, no.
And for some reason, the depth is not rendering properly. Let's see if anyone knows what's going on. So
Angelo saying need to match scene. I don't know if it's.
So we'll go here. We'll just check out everything. Make sure everything's good. Camera view. Ah, yes. So let's try this.
Oh,
There we go. Wow. Thank you.
Camera view. Good job. Brodel by.
So this is the depth pass here. So as you can see, what's black is in our foreground, and
And they will wake up. Yeah.
and what's in the back is
everyone.
white. And we can use this information to essentially blur certain aspects of our image right here. So this is what we need right here, and perfect. So let's go ahead and bounce back. I do want to render somewhat of a pretty scene, so I just want to go ahead and reposition some of this stuff. And just trying to line it up with the background. Background here. And let's just render a beauty pass.
I'm actually hearing the fan kick in.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna go ahead and bring back the global illumination under the effects. Global
And
illumination.
People on the stream can hear the fan now.
Oh really?
Which is okay.
Oh.
Of the Mac. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can kind of hear the render intensive. This is all CPU intensive. That's why you're hearing that. We can also add ambient occlusion, which is kind of like a way to add shadows within the inner parts of your geometry. But I'll show that in After Effects. So let's just render a few frames. Let's just render 4 frames because we don't have time for this. We'll render all frames from 0 to 4. So just 4. And we'll go ahead and let that render. I was giving us a prompt to make sure that we save it to somewhere. So for multi-pass image under save, we'll save it to the Adobe Live folder 3D design, and we'll just call this multi-passes. Create, and we'll call this Adobe Live. Save. So this is interesting debate here. So
PSD.
for the format of multipasses, there's been a lot of Twitter arguments, Slack battles, all that stuff on what people use. From the general consensus, it seems like a lot of people use PNGs just because it supports transparency, and it's also not intensive, and
it's very light.
It's very light, and it processes very fast in After Effects. Personally, I usually use TIFF PSD layers, but in this case, let's just use PNG here. You can also use JPEGs if it's not very important. 16 bits per channel, and you also have an option to save a project file with all the passes already there, but we won't do that, and we'll just go ahead
and they're all talking about EXR.
Now, EXR I will touch on in about 5 minutes here. So we'll go ahead and just render this to the picture viewer.
Have no idea what this is.
So OpenEXR is basically a format. It's like JPEG, PNG.
Okay.
It's just a format for files. And basically, you can save an EXR file, and it'll have all the passes within that single file. So you won't have like 5 different multipass layers. You're going to have about
one file. Like a zip.
So this is taking quite a long time because obviously it's rendering the global illuminations. I'm sure we can hop into another scene here. So while we're rendering those 4 frames, which is like not even a second of animation,
I'm gonna show tomorrow.
I want to show you guys a scene or a video by Ian Chudley.
Okay.
And basically, it is a video that he made to really showcase Cinema 4D and what you can do in Cinema 4D just using basic shapes. So he's not creating anything complicated in terms of geometry. See, these are just squares or cubes. Now this is an exception. This is more complicated. But he does.
But this is 3D.
This is all Cinema 4D, and this is 3D. And as you can see, they're just basic rectangle shapes. And I'm going to show you guys the project file for this in a second.
Wow.
So just basic geometry, and what he focused on really was making it cinematic using lighting, so shadows, texturing, all that stuff. Now, he did use Octane render for this. For those of you guys were wondering what render he's using, to do this in the standard or physical render would take millenniums on a regular MacBook Pro like this. But he used Octane, which is a GPU-based renderer, to create these really sick, beautiful shots right here. Depth of field, probably native in Cinema 4D.
Wow.
These nice grunge textures and lighting and all that stuff here. So this is something that he wanted to do in Cinema 4D, and he shows you that how even simple buildings and simple rooms and geometry can be a work of art if you just stick to the lighting and the shadows and stuff like that. So he's good friends with me, so he actually sent us a Cinema 4D file of a few of the scenes.
Woo!
So we have the luxury of seeing it here. Let me go ahead and open the scene here. We have it right here. Bridge scene. This is the more complicated scene, the very complex geometry.
He's awesome.
Yeah, so he used Octane. I don't have Octane on this machine right now. So I swapped the materials out, or I deleted the materials.
Yeah.
So we just have the raw geometry here. This is what the geometry looks like. And if you look through his project file, you can see that it's really not that complicated here. He has cloner objects.
Okay.
So we know what cloners are. We used cloners before. And if we just disable this, you can see that it kind of adds the rails.
The grid, the rails.
On the left side right here. So basically he just rendered it, he just modeled it once and cloned it through the whole bridge. So we know how to do that. And then of course he converted his cloner into polygons.
Okay. So
same thing here.
We'll try to make it closer so there's less fan. We have Paul, our sound engineer, on the case.
And so we have the ladder right here, which is very, very similar. He has a cloner. He used to use a cube cloner, cloned it, add a symmetry object to add some symmetry.
Okay.
So it kind of clones the geometry to make it symmetric. More cloners. Sweep nerve, which is, I believe they recalled it to something else. Oh, it's still sweep nerve. Hyper nerves is what they changed.
Okay.
But sweep nerves, which I will show you in a second. these basic cloner objects here, cylinders, using cylinders, cloner objects. So as you can see, we all know what this does. He's usually using simple cloner objects to really achieve this really complex geometry here, just using simple cloner objects.
So you mean like in this case, like modeling this scene?
Yes, modeling the scene is just
must have been like quite fast because you have all these tools.
Exactly. So we have.
So what was the main challenge, to get this cinematic look, in your opinion? It was more like playing with the lights, the shadow.
Exactly. It's more of the lighting and the shadowing.
Okay.
So that's really the hard part about this stuff. And actually, creating the geometry is probably the easier part because you can kind of learn modeling. Like once you learn the basic modeling tools and techniques, it's kind of the same thing, right? You just gotta do it. But the hard part is really texturing, like building textures, lighting things, and animating the camera is probably the harder part. We also have another scene here. This one's even more simple. And if I just render this real quick, you can see that it's just one giant rectangle here, one rectangle here, and we have these rectangles on the bottom right here. So fairly simple scene, but with the right lighting and the right camera move, we can create something very, very cinematic.
Oh, nice.
Just like this. It's just a really simple dolly shot looking up.
Mm-hmm.
And just by doing that, you get this really nice scene right here. I just added a sky and a basic light because I don't have Octane on this machine right now. And this scene here is this shot right here. So with the right texture, with the right lighting, and the nice image of the sky, you can get some really nice cinematic looks this way here. So someone asked, are camera animations added in Cinema 4D itself or later in After Effects? And for the most part, you should animate your camera in Cinema 4D because you have access to the 3D world in Cinema 4D.
Oh, yeah.
The moment you bring it into After Effects, you lose all that 3D capabilities, unless you're using something like Element 3D here, which I will talk about in a second. So I think our 3D render is done. We'll go ahead and hop into After Effects here and take a look at what we have. So on our multipass, we have all these passes I can see right here. We have the depth pass, diffuse, RGB-A, and the specular here. So let's go ahead and let's just bring in the diffuse first. And After Effects is smart enough to realize that this is an image sequence. So this is the diffuse. We'll bring in the depth. And we can probably bring in all these at once, but I'm just doing it one at a time so you guys can follow along. Specular. And I believe we have one more, which is the reflections. Let's see here. Right, the reflections. And the RGB. So now we have all of our passes right here. I'm just going to rename it so that we can follow along. This is the depth pass, specular, RGB, reflection, and diffuse. And by default, Cinema 4D, we're working in a color space or a workflow called linear workflow. And this is this is very, very complex, and not even I know really the in-depth about how this really works.
Okay.
But basically, it's something to do with the gamma and how it renders your lighting and stuff like that, and how it looks like. So in After Effects, by default, we're not using linear workflow. But if we click on the 8 bits per channel here, and we switch from working space to, let's just use sRGB, and we'll linearize the workspace. So it changes the gamma curve. And so once you bring in our scene, it looks more realistic here. So if I turn off linear workspace, and it should look different here. I think it's because I set it to sRGB. So as you can see. But you won't really notice the linear workspace until you really start manipulating the lighting, the color grading, and also affecting the luminance here. So I'm going to put it back to sRGB and linearize the workspace. Very, very good practice. You may even want to switch the bits per channel to about 16 because we rendered these files in 16 bits per channel. So we should use that. We have the diffuse. We have the depth pass, remember, which will give us the depth of field. We'll disable that. We'll bring in our reflection. right? This is just a reflection. So how do we add this in? We'll change the blending mode from normal to screen.
Okay.
So just like that, we edit our reflections into our diffuse. We'll also add in our specular, which is, I guess, the highlights. And we'll also set that to screen. So we're slowly starting to rebuild our scene this way. Now, obviously, I'm missing a few passes here for the color and transparency. Transparency is a little tricky to render. But just like that, we have a basic setup of our 3D scene. And let's say we wanted to make our highlights more distinct. We can add a curves effect to it. And we can just boost just the reflections. Or let's say we wanted to mess around with the actual diffuse pass. We can lower the diffuse down and color correct just certain aspects of what we're doing here, and we can just do all that stuff. So this is the standard way of working with 3D files or 3D scenes in After Effects. A lot of people still do this, and personally I prefer this method just because it's more standard and it's lighter. Another alternative here is to actually use Cineware. So luckily, After Effects supports native Cinema 4D files, so you don't need to save it in a weird way like OBJ files. Right, so we can just go into this scene right here, this narrow wall scene, Cinema 4D file, and we'll just save it. We'll go into After Effects. We will import this file just like any other footage file.
Okay.
So we'll go to 3D Design. We'll import the narrow wall scene. Hit Open. And it treats it just like a regular video file. So we can add this to a composition. And by default, it's giving us kind of like the viewport renderer here. And that's because we're set to the software renderer. If you set it to the standard final, it's going to render it as if we were rendering in Cinema 4D. And as you can see, it's taking just as long as Cinema 4D because it's using the same engine. But as you can see, we have our walls right here. We have this black transparent area because we didn't add a sky. And we have, let's just go ahead and fill that in real quick. Maybe we'll add a gray background to this. And hopefully it rendered with alpha. So yes, so we rendered it with alpha. So we have that sky going on. We have Cineware rendering our project live within Cineware. And the best part is you can actually access all the multi-pass settings right from within. So for example, we can go to the, let's see here, multi-pass linear workflow. We can actually enable it, and we can set the multi-pass to whatever you want. So we can,
so if you want to render the reflection again, then you would have a separate layer, or you would just get the reflection?
You would just get the reflection.
Okay.
In this Cineware file.
Yeah.
So
here we go.
Obviously I didn't add any textures to that particular project file, but you can set it to, anything you want, just the shadows, or render just the shadows, as you can see. And you can use this for compositing. And basically you can have multiple Cinema 4D files inside After Effects and just change the multipass to kind of simulate that traditional way of working in Cinema 4D. Yeah, there's a lot of mess in After Effects.
Now the backstage dude is alive. He's back.
So
thanks for
also someone also mentioned that you can also import the camera within After Effects, and that you can actually do. So you can actually bring in the camera from Cinema 4D into After Effects using the camera right here. So right now we're viewing it through the Cinema 4D camera. So we're viewing our scene as if we're viewing it from the Cinema 4D camera. We can actually utilize After Effects' camera and animate through After Effects' camera. So if you're more familiar with After Effects, you can just animate using After Effects. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to disable the multipass. And under camera, we're going to go and select the comp camera. So now we're out of sync here, but we can use the After Effects camera to really navigate through the scene. And as you can see, it's taking a render hit because, again, it has to re-render all this stuff. So
every time?
Every single frame needs to be re-rendered. So as you can see, we are slowly moving through.
Getting there.
Getting through our scene here using the After Effects.
And there is no way to
camera.
render like in draft mode or.
Oh, there is. So if you're animating stuff, you definitely want to go to draft mode or even software mode,
Oh, okay.
which is like the
Oh,
viewport version. So there we
now
go.
you can.
Now we can
set a
animate.
camera.
We can animate through
Oh yeah.
all this stuff right here.
Nice.
So this is just one way to work in Cinema 4D. So if you were inflexible, so things are always changing, you may want to use Cineware first, and then once you're ready and you're ready for the baked-in file, you would just render the files into like a JPEG, PNG. So this is just a quick way to bring things into After Effects. There's more that you can do. I know Jason Levine, a lot of other YouTubers have also done a lot of videos on Cineware. So I won't spend too much time on that, but basically it's a way to bring in Cinema 4D files into After Effects and utilize some of the passes. Now, a lot of people are saying how it's kind of slow and stuff like that, but Cineware has gone a lot faster since the original release. And I believe in the original release, you couldn't even render cloner objects and stuff like that.
Oh.
You can only render actual geometry, but now After Effects Cineware can actually take into account
Understands
cloners,
everything.
MoGraph. Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot better
And
now.
I think and we will ask Jason tomorrow, but
Right.
I think that now with Cineware you can leverage your GPU. There's something like this, like hardware acceleration for rendering.
Maybe, yeah. I mean,
I think he mentioned this, but we will ask him tomorrow just to make sure.
Awesome. So yeah, you can also extract data from your Cinema 4D scene. You can bring in cameras. Or you can even merge cameras. So bring in your After Effects camera into your Cinema 4D scene. So this very tight integration is very, very amazing.
Because I saw examples where it makes sense, where you just import like an object, like that you place in like real life footage, like video footage, and you just want to place an object using tracking.
Right. So
then you want to be able to rotate and everything. So.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one way to incorporate things into your scene for visual effects. Someone's asking, is Cineware better than using Element 3D? And I'm going to show you guys Element 3D right now because we already went through Cineware.
So Element 3D is by Video Copilot?
It is by Video Copilot right here. They make awesome stuff as well, but their most notable plugin for After Effects is Element 3D, which is essentially...
I have this one, optical flares.
Everyone uses optical flares. J.J. Abrams probably uses optical flares.
He is,
But Element 3D is basically like an engine to render things and bring in 3D scenes into there. And it even has like a basic cloner object module within Element 3D as well. And the best part is it renders very fast. So you can get it at videocopilot.net here. We'll go ahead and delete our scenes. And we'll go ahead and go to a new solid. We'll call it Element. And we'll add in a Video Copilot Element 3D. And we'll go to scene setup. And Element 3D, this is just like a whole new application within an application here. So we can import our Cinema 4D file straight into Element 3D, just like After Effects.
Okay.
We have the option to load in materials that were used, all that stuff here. I'm not going to worry about that too much here. And let's see. So it doesn't seem to be working. That's part of the way I set up it's part of the way the project was set up. We can go ahead and let's just try and export the Adobe Live. The Adobe Live project here. So we'll save this. And we'll call this Adobe Live.
Someone is asking, is it version 1 or version 2?
This is Adobe this is Element version 2.
Okay, Element version 2.
Which, by the way, is a huge step up from the version 1.
Yeah. Is it a recent update? It was from this year or?
I believe it was released last year.
Last year? Okay.
But same thing here. So let's go ahead and X this out.
You may need to scale it down. That's what they say.
Could be, yes. We will. There's an option for that when you import it.
How to scale?
The problem is it says that the vertices and faces are 0 and 0, so,
so
it's not really seeing any of that stuff here, which is very strange because I tested this out right before I came here.
Yeah.
Right. But basically, you can import your scene into Element 3D and texture it and do all that stuff here. Let's go ahead and figure, what's going on with this. Maybe we can tweet out Andrew Kramer or something. Force alignment, auto normals.
Say enable auto normals. Yeah, that's what Blueprint is saying.
Use auto
You're gonna
normals.
use auto normals. Auto normals. Yeah.
There we go. Wow. See, this is why we should have an interactive chat always.
Yeah.
So,
Blueprint. Yeah, just stay with us 24/7.
So here we have the bridge scene here, and here we have the
Wow.
live. This can be auto normal as well. So we have the geometry from the bridge scene by Ian here. And the best part is you can actually do all the texturing animation right within Element 3D here. So I have the Pro Shaders pack. We can go into the concrete path and just drag in maybe like a concrete material, rough concrete, into our material here. And just zoom in. Maybe we can add a different one.
Oh, you drag and drop directly on the
Directly into the bridge.
scene.
Hit OK. And we have the whole animation here. We'll create a camera. And just like Cineware, you can actually animate the bridge right within After Effects. And as you can see, it's a lot faster this way. And you also have the option to render out certain passes. So we go to the render settings and we go into the output actually and show, let's just say, the normals, specular, reflection. So we have all these options here to really like fine tune your 3D render scenes. And this is kind of like an alternative to Cineware. But there are pros and cons. So for example, you just can't import your Cinema 4D camera into Element 3D.
Okay.
You can't swap cameras. You can't do a lot of things. But for basic static scene setups, like maybe like a bridge or a basic 3D model, After
inside
Effects,
your composition. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's
Element 3D may be the way
it's
to go.
impressive. Yeah.
So we're just adding all this stuff in here. So you can do all that texturing and all that stuff within Element 3D.
Immense 3D. So how much is this plugin?
It's actually very affordable. It's considering what it is, I believe it's $199.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Which is comparing to the other plugins out there
Yeah, they
that
are.
do a lot less. It's very affordable. And I would recommend it to pretty much any motion graphic designer out there because just the ability to create 3D text alone would be very useful. So we can go ahead and set that up right now. We can. The way you do it is you create a new text layer, and we'll just type whatever we want, Adobe Live, and we'll shut it off. Go to Element, and under the Custom Layers, Custom Text and Mask, we'll select our Adobe Live text layer. Hop into the scene setup. Let's go and delete the bridge, and we'll just hit Extrude. And it's going to extrude our text just like that. Very simple, very easy. And we can also apply some bevels here. There's some preset bevels. We can just apply it on there. Bevels, different materials, preset, all this stuff. Or you can create your own bevels and extrusion and fine tune the extrusions and bevel depth and all that stuff right within Adobe. And if you just zoom in here, there's quite a bit of detail. So you see all the reflections, all the materials here. So just the ability to do this is a huge feat in After Effects. It's very fast. The rendering is very fast. And you guys are saying how fast this is. I mean, this is on a MacBook. Imagine if you were like on a GTX Titan or something like that. But yeah, it's very fast. And in version 2, it supports depth of field and all that stuff. So before, I think you couldn't really support that. You had to fake it or something like that. But now you can actually add all that stuff in. Or I could be wrong, but I know that they added something very big, like the glow features and all that stuff, and more realistic shadows. That's very important. So yeah, this is probably the best thing you're gonna get for 3D and After Effects is Element 3D. You can light things. So for example, let's go ahead and just add a plane right here, and we'll just scale it up to make a fake ground, and we will just lower it down in our scene, and we'll just drop in a concrete texture, just like that. Hit OK. So now we have our fake ground, and this doesn't look very good, but luckily After Effects supports all the native stuff like lights. So we can create a light here. We can enable cast shadows and hit OK. And we'll bring this up. And we'll go to element here, and we'll go into the render settings, lighting, use comp lights.
You can tell, okay.
We can go to shadows and enable shadows, and we'll use ray trace shadows, which is a little bit more realistic, but it's not updating right now because I think the 3D space is kind of messed up.
You don't know where
I think it's because
where the light goes.
Yeah, this is one of the downsides of working in After Effects. The 3D space is very, very
hard to understand.
It's hard to visualize because you don't have any grid or anything like that.
So maybe you are putting some light in the back, but
so you can kind of see the shadow right here. I don't know if you guys can see it in the stream. Let me go ahead and try to make the shadows more intense here. So maybe add 500. And it's probably the fall off that's making it very soft here. So in light, you can hit AA to bring up the light options, and radius fall off.
Oh yeah.
You can kind of see the light.
Yeah. See the shadow on the left.
Right. It's probably because of my GPU also. So make sure you have a dedicated GPU when working with.
Michelle is asking, is the text layer turned on for 3D?
No, the text layer is not turned on for 3D because After Effects just uses the path of the text and extrudes it by itself. So it's purely dependent on Element 3D. So let's add simple light here. And also, you can also add ambient occlusion, which is what I was saying earlier. Basically, it adds shadows internally into tight areas.
You want you to use the spotlight.
Spotlight. Spotlights would work. It's not really rendering anything well right now, to be honest. So we'll go to light. We'll create a spotlight, because like not even a ambient occlusion is working. So
yeah, I saw something.
So this is the spotlight here.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see the shadows going on.
Something's happening. It's very
right. It's very, very subtle. I don't know what's going on, but you kind of get the idea of what you can do in 3D here. Just as you can see. So if someone is saying go to the multi-pass mixer and turn up the shadows here. So we can do that. There you go. To see more of the shadows. I don't know how y'all can see it in the live stream.
Yeah, it's hard to guess, hard to see.
Right, but you kind of get the idea here. This is the power of Element 3D.
Oh, they can see it now. Oh, they can see. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the lights do have shadows turned on. Cast shadows on.
I think you may have lighting influence on the Element 3D render settings. Okay.
But overall, yes, this is
basically it's just
basically how to render things, and you can also view a lot of tutorials on Andrew Kramer's site on how to use Element 3D and how to incorporate all this stuff. It's very, very rich. Element 3D is kind of like an application on its own, so it's something that you need to learn and work with here. So that is the basic idea behind the 3D workflow within After Effects. Rendering into sequences, traditional image sequences, Cineware, or Element 3D. It just really depends on what you're trying to do and how complex your scene is. That dictates what you do, what kind of process you take. But hopefully that was very... Oh, and Andrew Kramer is here, apparently. No. Maybe that cannot be the real Andrew Kramer.
Or is it a good joke?
Now everyone's going to watch Andrew Kramer now. But basically that was kind of the idea behind the 3D workflow within After Effects here. So let's see. Let's go see if it's actually Andrew Kramer.
Yeah. I think it's just a picture.
Right. So this is the rough 3D workflow. So that's pretty much it for the 3D workflow within After Effects. Now I want to move on to more traditional 3D stuff within After Effects.
Yeah.
Particularly 3D effects within After Effects.
Okay.
So for that, in the past we've had stuff like 3D Invigorator, which was like a basic 3D extrusion plugin.
Yeah.
Way back, I think even 1999, 2000,
okay.
like way back then. And then we had Metal Shapeshifter, which was kind of OG as well. It allowed us to extrude things based on texture maps. But now we have more things going on. For example, Element 3D. But we also have something called Trapcode Tau and Trapcode Mirror. And these two things have been really, really, really big in terms of
Trapcode. Oh, yeah.
3D stuff within After Effects. So it's a Red Giant product. This is not a native plugin within After Effects.
Okay.
But the Trapcode suite is pretty much industry standard. Almost every design shop, every freelancer has the Trapcode suite.
Oh, okay.
For example, Particular, you guys know Particular.
Yeah.
It's a particle system, form. But the 3D stuff is really, the really cool stuff here is Trapcode DAO and Trapcode Mirror. And they are almost the exact same thing, in my opinion, except there's one distinct feature, which I'll talk about later. But this scene right here, this is created in Trapcode Mirror.
Wow.
This is right in After Effects. And you can manipulate the geometry right in After Effects.
Oh.
No Cinema 4D required, none of that stuff. And, all this stuff here is created using Trapcode Mirror. And Trapcode DAO is a little bit different. You can also create geometry, but it's more for spline-based stuff. So it's really for motion paths. So let's go ahead and hop right in. And we'll create a new composition. And we'll just take a look at Mirror first. And we would definitely make a smaller comp size. So we'll create a new layer. We'll call this Mirror. And we will apply Trapcode Mirror to the scene. And this is what Trapcode Mirror looks like by default. It's
There's already something.
fractal-based geometry. And this is one of the few ways to even create geometry in After Effects to begin with. But let me explain when you would use Mirror and when you would use Trapcode Tau. Trapcode Mirror is really for more static stuff, for more like geometry, basic scenes that like mountains or fractals, space fractals.
So you would use the camera just to
Right.
go through, but
Right, exactly.
it won't move like. But that's what I mean. It's not kind of organic.
Right. I mean,
living
you can animate the fractal of Trapcode Mirror, which
Yeah.
will slowly animate the waves of Trapcode Mirror and add
Okay.
some evolution to it. But for the most part, it's very static. It kind of stays there, and you use the camera to animate around Trapcode
Okay.
Mirror. So, but Trapcode DAO is driven by your paths in After Effects. So you can actually animate it and do things with it. In fact, in this stream, we're going to talk about a few ways to use these plugins to create stuff like this fire that I made here. This would have been almost impossible a while ago without these kind of 3D softwares here. So we kept these lightning effects right here.
Nice. Oh, yeah, I saw this one on Twitter.
Right.
You shared it.
So
Too.
doing these things, it's a lot faster using 3D, and you can actually use 3D plugins like this to create 2D effects as well. So just because it's a 3D plugin doesn't mean you only use it for 3D stuff. So for an example, for Mirror, everyone likes to create mountains. People use low poly stuff for this. So let's get that out of the way before people ask about it here. So
Wow, look at that.
this is just a fractal field basically.
Yeah.
And what we can do is we can rotate it like that. So rotate it in X. And we're going to go into the materials right here.
Oh, there is a There's a very complex question, but interesting. Like, can you use script with plugins? So let's say you develop a plugin for After Effects.
Right.
Can you open like the SDK so someone can expose some properties?
You can actually do that. There's a few people like the script and plugin called Templater by Ari. He uses a combination of plugin and script to drive the whole process.
Wow.
But it's not very, very normal because usually things you can do in scripts, you can probably do in plugins as well. So back to the mountains here. We have different shader options. So this is kind of the way it renders. And for the best results, you always need to add a light to your Trapcode products. So we'll add a light. We'll maybe make it this warm color here.
It's a spot. Be careful. I don't know if it's what we want.
We can use spot. We can use point. We'll just use point in this case. And we'll bring this up. So this is the Phong shader, flat shader, and density shader. So density is more like the additive mode in for effects. We have the fill. We can just show the wireframes. So you can kind of create like a plexus look this way. Low poly look. You can use render points and front fill back wire. And if we just create a camera, this is fully 3D, so we can actually animate all this and move around and everything. So it's pretty cool how we can generate this in After Effects.
Wow.
And then we can let's go ahead and go and change the color to something else. Let's make it a blue color. And I'm gonna go back from 16 bits to 8 bits and get off linear workflow. So we have something like this. And let's go ahead and create a background here. So call this BG, bring it in the back, and let's go ahead and throw in a gradient. So I'm gonna go to the effects and presets and search in a ramp.
Is the first one?
It's the gradient ramp, yes. We'll bring that in. Radio ramp, we'll just create a very basic scene here. So something like that. We'll center this guy and create kind of this fake vignette. And we'll scatter it. So we'll just kind of scatter it, add some noise to it so that we won't have that nasty banding. And let's just... So cool. So we have something like this. And let's go ahead and go into the fractal, and we can change the way the fractal noise is really messing around with this geometry here. So we have the amplitude, which controls how much it's affected, and we have the frequency. So usually you want to lower down the frequency here.
Okay.
So that we have more organic looking things going on. And we can add more vertices, basically adding more geometry points, breaking points in our model. And then let's go ahead and go into let's go to the Phong shader and use the fill and set the blend to normal here. These are basically how Mirror renders, and people are asking how intensive it is. Mirror is actually very, very fast. I think it's on par with Element 3D considering what you're doing. So it's not heavy at all. And I think the shadow is really messing this thing up. So we will turn off shadows for now. Maybe set it to 100 intensity. So see, we can create some slimy looking geometry this way. So if you wanted to create some mountains, of course you would maybe low poly mountains, you would maybe decrease the vertices back to 50-50. And we'll go into the amplitude. Maybe crank it up. And the scene is looking disgusting right now, so maybe we can change it to a more neutral color. And also, it needs to be noted that Trapcode Mirror and Trapcode DAO are all GPU accelerated. That's the reason why it's so fast. So depending on your GPU, you can get some artifacts, you can get some weird things. It depends on your GPU, really. But for any modern GPU, usually it's usually pretty good.
Yeah, it's very impressive how fast this is.
Right, and
you can really change in real time your model.
Right, so we can set the normal depth buff, turn that on. You can create some interesting geometry here. Now, the mountain things, everyone creates it. I have a tutorial on it. So I don't want to waste too much time considering we only have about like 30 minutes left. So I want to go ahead and dive right into the more interesting stuff, which is chapcode DAO.
Dun, dun, dun.
And
so was Mir the one they were using to do the wave of water? Like you were
that is
showing
actually chapcode DAO.
Is it DAO? Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So DAO here, we can create, we can apply the effect onto here. Trapcode DAO. And so by default, it creates this basic circular geometry here. We don't need this. We'll turn this off. What we want to do is we want to create our own path. So where do you want this thing to animate? We'll use the pen tool, and we'll just draw our path that we want. So.
Okay.
Let's just draw some random one like this. And as you can see, it creates geometry based on your path. And not only does it do that, but it actually allows you to animate along the path, which is something that you can't do in Mir. Mir is just you animate
just
the fractal.
Static
that's it.
shape. Yeah. Wow.
So we can go into the paths from mask, and we can taper it. And already it's looking pretty cool. And we can also animate this thing. So we can start from 0, and we can go 1 second in, animate it, hit U on the keyboard to show keyframes, and it will start here. We'll key from the start path, and we'll just end it right here. So we'll set this to 100. So we have a quick animation like this.
Whoa.
Just kind of sliming through. We'll maybe ease these a little bit later, but here we have this basic geometry here.
Whoa.
And just like Trapcode Mir, you can go in here. We have the same exact settings. So we have segments. We can change the size of certain things. We can add more segments in here, more different sides. We can choose different segment modes, and we can also tessellate, and we can also use GPU optimization. We can twist the geometry if it was more of a complex geometry here. We can also have the ability to displace it using fractals, just like Trapcode Mirror, so we can mess up the geometry this way, and do some really cool abstract things like this, and do abstract designs. So I'm gonna go ahead and just maybe mess around with the geometry a little bit. I'm gonna add more segments to it, which is like increasing the resolution.
Oh yeah.
So
I can tell that Joel is French because he's making a joke on Tao. It's about a cartoon.
Oh really?
You had to be a kid in France to understand the joke. It's a good one.
So as you can see, we're editing the fractal here. I'm just gonna decrease the frequency so it's not as crazy, and decrease the amplitude. So we kind of get the same thing here. So again, we have this really quick animation, just like this, kind of slimy. We kind of break up the geometry a little bit, so it's a little bit more organic.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and decrease the size. It's a little bit too thick for my opinion, so just make it very thin, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
So a nice little wisp, just like that. You can use use this using ink strokes. You can use this to create like balloon animations. Yes, it's basically trim paths on steroids in 3D. So we can go in here, and just like Trapcode Mirror, we have the material and lighting section. And here we can change things like the color, so we'll make it kind of like a blue color.
Oh, thank you, DJM. And by the way, if you like live streams like this about After Effects or on any kind of topics, so make sure to like the video. It will help us. Subscribe to the Adobe Craft channel, and also you can post comments also on the video if you want to say, oh, maybe next time it would be great to have Vincent showing. I don't know, like you were talking about some plugins. I don't remember which ones, but don't hesitate also to suggest some topics, or maybe you want to see to learn how to use Adobe Animate. I mean, a completely different tool, and we make sure to find an expert who is very good at teaching this and have a live stream with these experts. But also for Vincent, if you want him to cover live some topics, we'll bring him back.
Yeah, so unfortunately we can't give away the Trapcode suite right now, but maybe
Maybe next
in the
time we will
future.
call them.
Yeah,
Who
maybe in the
knows?
future.
Yeah.
So we have texture information. So you can even add textures to Trapcode Tau. You can create your own texture maps and displacement maps and do that cool stuff here. But basically, right now we have all this stuff, right? Let's go ahead and start making this look a little bit more like kind of like a lightning effect. So we'll add a very popular turbulence displace effect here.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like adding its own fractal on top of its own fractal.
Yeah.
So we're adding a fractal on top, and we're going to increase the amount just to kind of make it a little more rough here. It's a little bit too smooth. So we're adding a little bit of roughness and increasing the amount. So we have a little more of a rough animation here. And let's go ahead and animate the complexity, or actually increasing complexity to around, let's just do 2. The higher you go, the higher the render times.
Okay.
And for the evolution, we want to animate the evolution, but we want to do it automatically. So we'll hit Alt on the keyboard or Option on the Mac.
Okay.
Hit the evolution stopwatch, and we're going to
An
apply
expression.
the time asterisk, let's just say 80. And this will multiply the current time by 80, so it's always changing the evolution.
The current time. Okay.
Yes, current comp time.
That's funny.
And then we're going to go ahead and duplicate turbulent displace. And we're just going to tweak this one more time.
So, Jacob, if you want to find Vincent's YouTube channel, it's in the description of this video. There is a link. And his website is Creative Dojo. I can put the link again, no problem.
So yeah, we're just going to be adding another turbulent displace layer to create the finer tweaks to this little bolt right here. And if you want, you can set the anti-aliasing to high. But in this case, I think we're okay here. So we'll go ahead and play around with the material here. Now the material in Trapcode Tau and Mirror is really what brings out the cool looks.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, we can go in here, we can go into rendering. Let's see what they have here. So we have the shader, we have the density, which as you can see added a lot cooler look.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn off the layer controls so we can see.
Looks like a blue flame on the thing.
Right, so that's using the density shader. You can use smooth shader, flat shader. They're all different. We have the same front fill, back wire, different options here, or just a wireframe, so you can create that cool look. We're going to stick to density shader for now and use the fill. And then we can enable like add, super add to create different looks. You can play around with the density effect.
Oh.
Play around with the normals to really dial in that look that you're going for.
And someone's asking, like, are you a self-taught After Effects user?
Yeah, so most of us are usually self-taught. None of us
Yeah.
really went to design school or anything like that. So it's all, you just have to experiment and stuff like that and play around.
You met the YouTube school?
Yeah, the YouTube school.
YouTube school.
Everyone's enrolled in that school.
It's the biggest design school today.
And also we have ambient occlusions in Trapcode DAO as well. So that's very helpful in this case. So let's go ahead and add a few glows to this thing. And we'll add a glow. And usually for glows, for this kind of stuff, you want to be in 16 bits per channel. But we'll just stick to 8 bits for now.
Ooh.
So we're adding a glow. We're playing around with the threshold here. And I always usually add more than one glow, because usually the first glow is just kind of the initial hotspot. And then the actual emitting stuff is actually from a second glow. So we'll increase the radius for the second glow by quite a bit.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And then increase the threshold, maybe decrease the intensity. But in the end, you get something like this. And the cool part about DAO is that you can actually replicate stuff. So it has a cloner within itself as well. So we can go into the, I believe it's the repeat paths. We can go into the first repeater, and we can repeat it. And then we can also...
So you use Where is the repeater? Is it in the?
It's right within the plugin here. So under.
Okay.
Under
It's
the
also in the
offset.
trap code options.
Yep.
It's not the classic repeater. You
Right,
have
right.
Okay, it's not.
So we can also even randomize the size in X. We can
No.
change the position in Z a little bit.
Okay.
So you can create these really geometric, nice animations this way, and so you can pretty much clone it like Cinema 4D cloner and just randomize the size and all that great stuff. We can even offset the path here, so we can offset size, we can offset the position, and we can offset all this stuff so they're not all synced up nicely. So something like this. A lot of people use trapcode DAO for more simple, low poly geometric stuff. So you can do that.
Yeah.
But I just want to show you guys that you can
Yes,
actually
also, yeah.
you can use it for more serious 2D style effects, not just low poly stuff. We can even play around with the material. So if you play around with the material, you're really going to get different results. So if we turn down the ambient, maybe turn up the diffuse, and play around with the opacity, play around with the metal shaders, reflections, you can get some pretty interesting stuff, even like light fall off. Has that built in, so you can control
Oh my god.
like self-lighting and stuff like that. So it's very cool.
Wow.
If you want more realistic results, you use distance squared, which is a formula for the light fall off, which is a little more realistic here. But we'll go with smooth, and so it's kind of like self-lighting itself. This way.
And they're asking like if you move the 3D camera, like can you?
Right, and again, just like Trapcode Mirror, this is all.
So you can move inside this.
Right, so you
This stone.
can even look at it
What?
while it's coming at you. So you can kind of create
So
this
fast.
this immersive experience this way. Just like this using Trapcode DAO. And the best part is if you want to change the path, you can easily do that. 'Cause it's all
Oh.
it's not baked in. So
And you can animate the path.
yes, you can't actually animate the path. So I'm just gonna show layer controls once again. And if you wanted to, well, we're not viewing it front on anymore. We're actually in 3D space, but you can move the path, you can animate the path, and of course, Trapcode
Right.
DAO will follow the new path. So it's all here. You can create some really cool stuff this way.
Wow.
So this can be used for maybe like a missile strike, smoke,
Yeah.
different
I want to
types of
try it
things.
for animated typography.
Right. So
You
yeah.
know,
So
draw later. You know.
you can actually convert your text to paths.
to a path. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you use Trapcode
And
DAO
apply this.
to do that. Maybe we can even try that a little bit later. So something like this. You can create some flame animations that way. But basically, this is a great way to create some flames. Maybe if you want to just animate from a single point, you can animate using lights, using Trapcode DAO, and all these different options here. So you can play around with this. You can add caps to it. Play around with this.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can get some pretty interesting results here. So let's see, any yes, also you can do image-based lighting. So just like in Cinema 4D and Element 3D, you can actually import a HDRI or something like that,
Okay.
and use that to light Trapcode Mirror and Tau, just like anything else. So
Mm.
because it has options for reflections, you can actually do that, and you can get some pretty realistic looking.
Oh yeah. Oh, so I guess that's how they did the water.
Right,
the
right.
wave.
So it's transparent, but with refraction. So we can show that real quick. We can just reset this. Oh, so we have this crazy. Actually, no, we shouldn't reset this. We should go back into the shader here, material. We'll set it back to kind of a gray color. And let's go ahead and turn off the turbulent displace a little bit. Or turn off the turbulent displace. So we have something like that. Turn off the glow. And we'll go ahead and increase the size. So go back to the path mask, and we'll increase the taper a little bit, and go into the segments and increase the size. So something like that. And actually there's an option to change the segment mode. So repeat n-gons, a little bit different.
Okay.
To repeat spheres, so we get spheres. That's even cooler. And if I go ahead and mess around with the fractal field, you can see that there are more spheres than anything. But of course, you can do something like this. And let's go ahead and try to make this using light this using image lighting here. So in the project panel, I'm going to import an image. I believe it's in the documents, video copilot, environments, and backlight 4K. We can import any environment, so this one here. Oh, it imported it as a sequence.
Oh.
So usually there's an option to disable options here. We'll uncheck JPEG sequence. And we'll bring this image into the comp. And we will disable it. Go to Tau. And go to, let's see here, the textures. And we can go into backlight 4K. And as you can see, we have our textures mapped into the geometry here, which is very, very, very cool.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, from here on, we can add a Fresnel. We can add lights to the scene to start lighting it. Just like that. So we can play around with the lighting, create some very interesting looks. And you can add multiple lights in here. You can do whatever you want. And this is the perfect time to show you ambient occlusion, because whenever you use any of these Trapcode Me or Tau plugins, you want to enable ambient occlusion because it's so fast, and also it really makes it look a lot more realistic. So we can go into the settings here. Let's go look for it. I believe it's under render. We'll add ambient occlusion turned on. It will increase the intensity. So you can really start to see the self shadows that it makes. And I'm kind of pushing it to the limits right here because it's kind of small on the stream. But as you can see, ambient occlusion off, ambient occlusion on. So it adds the shadows between the segments and the geometry that way.
Wow.
And we can lower the intensity down.
Which was fast, I mean, to render.
Yeah, very, very, very fast. And if you're getting a little bit of banding because of the ambient occlusion, because this is like in After Effects, we can enable dithering, which will kind of cut the ambient occlusion into segments, so it's not as bandish. You don't see the band as much, and it's more less noise. And so just like that, we created something like this. Of course, you can add Fresnels and do all these crazy complex stuff with it. Maybe it'll look cooler if we turn on the background. You know, something like this.
Yeah.
So nice.
And you know, you can play around with the ambient lighting. You can add more diffuse or less diffuse. You know, just stuff like this. Play around with the metals, the Fresnel. These kind of plugins, you really just want to experiment with it and see what you can do, because honestly, no one knows what they're doing in these plugins. You're just kind of experimenting, making abstract designs, and having fun animating this stuff right here. So you can get some pretty cool results this way, and you know, fractals and different fractal types and all that great stuff here. So this is a little bit more crazy, but as you can see, the possibilities are pretty much endless here. So you can create some really cool stuff, and you can use different textures and different things like that too. Yeah. So as you can see, crazy stuff. That's here.
Amazing.
So let's go ahead and try that with maybe some text. So like you said before, let's go ahead and reset this, and just we'll just delete the whole thing, and we'll turn this off. And let's go ahead and add some text here. So let's go ahead and type in Adobe Live. We'll center it, and maybe use a bolder font. And scale this thing way up so we can see this. So we can convert this to a path by going to, I believe, Layer, or right-clicking and just convert to path. Convert mass from, create mass from text. Cool. So now we have our outline.
Okay.
And we can go ahead and I believe we can just copy this mask right here. So copy all this. Copy it, and we'll create a new Trapcode DAO layer. We'll paste those paths in there, and we'll go ahead and create and apply Trapcode DAO. And we'll turn off the path generator. That should probably be off by default. But as you can see, automatically DAO actually grabs the mask from the layer itself and it creates an extrusion with it. So obviously we can go in here and go into the the segments and lower down the size a little bit, and maybe.
And geeky brackets, yeah, the files from the scripting live stream yesterday, yeah. Vincent will share them with me later this week.
Probably by the end of today, it should be up.
By the end of the day, and I will update the description. So tomorrow you will get the files. And the links and everything.
Yeah, so just like that, we have all this stuff. We can increase the segments.
Oh, nice.
Decrease the segments. So you can create some really cool animations this way. And then you can go to offset. You can offset all this stuff using position. So yeah, I can offset this stuff and animate it, create cute little animations, twist it, whatever you want, colorize it. So yeah. Have you ever tried DAO with a client on your back? No, because if they did, then that would not look too good. Again, like I said before, this is the kind of plugin where you just experiment and play around with, like you can create a lot of different looks.
You have videos where you use DAO?
Yes, I do have a few tutorials using this plugin. So, for example, you can create this very realistic DNA strand using Trapcode DAO. So, very more realistic approach.
These two?
This is also Trapcode DAO. You can create some really nice abstract metal look using Trapcode DAO. So just something like this, you can create some pretty cool looks here.
Oh yeah, already.
And then if you added some color to it, added some slight animations, maybe create some pretty cool stuff here and start lighting it up using certain things. So like Adobe's like red or something, you can use a nice red and create some pretty cool stuff. One really last trick before we kind of wrap this up is a really cool trick that I found accidentally. So if we go and just kind of zoom in here and change the quality to full, we can maybe make this kind of a darker blue color just so we can kind of see it. And people are always trying to create this carbon fiber look in After Effects. Carbon fiber is like the hot thing right now. It's used in cars and all these things. And a really cool quick trick is that if you actually go into the renderer right here and we turn on the ambient occlusion to dither, any of these dithers, and we increase it, let me just turn off the layer controls. And go ahead and create a background too, so we can kind of see what we're doing. And this geometry may be a little bit too small to see, but if we go ahead and decrease the radius, you can kind of get that carbon fiber look right here. Maybe not in this geometry because there's so much going on, but if I make something bigger, then you could probably see it. Let's reset that and let's try it now. We can go into the ambient occlusion and we'll turn on the intensity and we'll turn down the radius.
Whoa.
So now you're really starting to see the lighting in there. And then if we maybe make it a little bit darker.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You can kind of create an ambient occlusion look, carbon fiber look. Not the best in this case, but of course you can play around with the different shaders and radius in order to get that carbon fiber look. Change your material to black. Maybe increase the ambient occlusion color to white, and to create a more of a carbon fiber look. And you can kind of see what you can do. Or even fake typography maps. So we're trying to create typography maps or topography maps of the elevation and heights. Maybe you can create it that way. So just to kind of give you guys ideas of what you can do. This is ambient occlusion, but you can also use it stylistically to create different things as well. So, yeah, that is some 3D stuff within After Effects.
Jason.
Yeah. Yes. Personally, I want to meet Jason Levine too. I haven't met him yet here in San Francisco, but he's apparently he's here somewhere.
Trying to find him. Okay, let me see if he's online. No.
So back here in Cinema 4D, is there anything you guys want to see in Cinema 4D before we hop off the stream here? I can show you the sweep nerves, which is a little bit interesting here. So create a new project, and how the sweep nerve works is that you create two splines. So let's say we have a circle, decrease the radius, and we have this helix right here, and we'll inverse it. So basically, using the sweep nerves, you can drag that in. We'll apply the thing that we're sweeping with, which is this circle, and we'll make it a child, and we'll also sweep it with the helix. So it took the circle and it just sweeps it around the helix, which is really, really cool. You can create some really interesting animations like this and some pretty cool geometry like this. So if it was more complicated, like a platonic here, we can sweep that along the helix. Let's redo this. Let's drag. Oh, it needs to be a spline. Sorry. So we can maybe use even a profile. We'll drag that into the sweeps, and we'll drag the helix into the sweep. And for some reason, it's not sweeping anymore. But yeah, you saw what I did there. I applied a circle and sweeped it around the sweep nerves. Let's see what's going on. The bool in Cinema 4D is actually very, very interesting as well. Dynamics is very interesting. I don't know if we have time for this, but Cinema 4D can do realistic dynamic simulations. So, for example, if we have this plane, and let's say I had a lot of spheres going around. Let's say I have one sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And we want it to drop down and bounce more realistically. We can add a dynamics tag to this thing.
Oh, there is a physics engine?
There's a very simple physics engine, yes.
Oh, okay.
So simulations, we can add this as a rigid body. We can add this as I believe it's a rigid body, but it's static. So we can do that. And for the plane, we need to set this as, let's just see. It's been a while since I've been in the dynamics tag, but a trigger, let's see what they're saying. So dynamics, let's set this to off, see if that works.
Boom.
There we go. So the ball kind of just bounced on there, and we can make this more interesting by setting maybe the bounce to maybe 100%. As you see, the ball bounces back that way.
Wow.
If we wanted to, the power of cloners, we can add a cloner, add the sphere in there, and all the balls just pop and just kind of bounce everywhere because the cloner is spawning right there. But as you can see, we have all of our balls just kind of bouncing around just like that. And let's use a grid array. So they're all just kind of bouncing everywhere. They're exploding because they're appearing right on each other.
Oh, yeah.
But you kind of get the idea here. It just bounces around. You create some pretty cool stuff that way. X Particles is another cool Cinema 4D plugin that you guys were talking about. It's basically the trap cut particular of Cinema 4D.
Oh, okay.
Really complex particle work there. Yeah. So, any other questions? Balls, yes. Yeah, so, yeah, X Particles is actually really fun and easy to do. But it's also very...
X Particles, is it for Cinema 4D?
It's for Cinema 4D. Okay. It's not a free plugin either. It's actually like $249, I believe. But still the best particle system of Cinema 4D. And I probably wouldn't use any of the native particle systems within Cinema 4D as well. So X Particle is probably the way to go for that. Real Flow, Turbulence FD, more complex stuff that we won't talk about today. Real Flow is for liquid simulations. Turbulence FD is fluid simulations like smoke, fire, that stuff. But definitely learn Cinema 4D.
We still have 5 minutes together. Maybe you want to show your tutorials or your website, so
Yeah,
so our viewers can continue the experience, after the stream.
right. So on my site, I actually have a lot of TrapCode DAO and Mirror tutorials. So, for example, the Skybox VR Skybox is things created with TrapCode Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
DNA strands, it's more complex metal stuff. You can create some really cool like Plexus style 3D stuff within Cinema 4D using this technique right here. More TrapCode Mirror stuff. We have a lot of tutorials on just creating really cool 3D stuff within After Effects. And yes, I have covered TrapCode Form, but not in this stream. Form's been out since like 2003, 2004, I believe. So it's been out for quite a long time. Well, if it isn't the man himself.
How are you doing, man?
Nice
to finally meet you. Oh,
Nice to meet you.
I have to give you a hug.
You're on the stream.
Yes, crashing the stream briefly. So I just had to come by and say hello. I'm gonna miss you tomorrow.
Yeah, I know.
And I know we talked about you coming, and I've been watching. And it's been going awesome. So have you been having a good time on the stream this week?
Yeah, we're actually on air
my
right
God.
now.
Yeah.
And like,
You'll be amazed,
Dude. Sorry, just showing some love on the stream here.
Yeah.
so Jason will be talking in his own stream at my time tomorrow at
Yeah.
1 p.m.
Yeah,
Pacific time. So
the schedule and so actually, if you can show what's coming with Cineware and stuff, because we talked about it.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
but
they're talking about the whole ray tracing engine in Cinema 4D and where that's going with Cineware and stuff.
so yeah, they want to know
I
more.
want that
Okay.
from you.
Cool. All right. Okay, well, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely we're going to go through some of that and probably show some of the things that I was showcasing at IBC last week.
Exactly. That's
Uh,
because I tried to explain what's coming, but I said Jason will cover it.
Some of the auto-aware VR stuff
Yeah.
and some really cool like 4K stereoscopic VR, which is like really
Yeah,
awesome.
we talked about it also in the chat.
Oh,
they were
right.
asking, can
Cool.
I edit VR video, 360 videos?
Yeah. Oh, and I have a whole bunch of footage actually that I can show that was shot with that Samsung 360
Oh, yeah.
4K.
Oh, yeah, you need to see that.
It's
good.
quite fantastic. Yeah, like properly exposed, good lighting. It does not disappoint, and that's now I think commercially available everywhere in the world. So
Okay.
definitely a good one.
And Vincent, yeah, he was showing a trap code.
Yeah.
Tower.
Oh yeah.
Everyone-
Yeah.
everyone
yeah.
loves
Trap
Trap
code.
code.
Oh my god.
Shine was probably my all-time favorite plugin.
Everyone uses
Yeah,
Shine,
right.
yeah.
I mean, and it goes back so long ago already. So anyway, all right, listen. I didn't want to break up the stream. I just have to come in, crash, say hi.
Oh, yeah.
Feel like I've known you for so long, and yet I've never.
On Twitter.
But that's kind of the thing, right? We
Right.
talk virtually to so many people, so it's great to meet you in person.
Yeah, great.
Safe
Take a
travels
picture
back.
afterwards.
Oh, dude, let's
Yeah.
take it right now
All right, let's
Yeah.
do it.
because I gotta go.
Actually, I'm gonna end the stream in 1 minute, and
Oh.
then you can take the picture.
Okay.
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 So let's do that.
Hi, Skip.
Thank you,
Esquire Gaming.
Vincent. Please say
Yeah.
thank you to Vincent in the chat. I mean, he
So-
was awesome. And stay with us because in about, let's say 12 minutes, Mikey will be back. Mikey, who will present dynamic effects today. So let me put the link in the chat.
Right. If y'all seen some long
Boom.
shadow stuff, it's probably Mikey's work.
Oh, yeah. Dynamic effects. It will be awesome. So thank you again, Vincent.
Yeah, thanks so much for having
It
me. It was
was
a great time
great.
talking to you guys.
Yes.
And thanks for all the questions coming out.
And we have this next. Okay,
Thank you,
here we
guys.
go. Okay. See you soon. Bye.